China and the United States have been engaged in a prolonged trade war in recent years. From President Trump's term to the current President Biden, the sanctions imposed on China have shown no signs of easing, indicating that the trade war is still ongoing. Now, let's imagine that somehow China and the US transform their trade war into a military war and analyze what would happen. In terms of strength, it is clear that the United States is stronger than China. However, the specific advantages that the US has over China might not be well known to many people, so let's analyze them from one aspect. Firstly, let's talk about defense spending. In 2021 alone, the US allocated a staggering $780 billion to its defense budget, which is equal to Vietnam's annual budget for 13 years and surpasses the defense spending of China, India, Russia, Saudi Arabia, France, Germany, the United Kingdom, Japan, South Korea, and Brazil combined. On the other hand, China's defense spending is only 30% of the US, totaling $250 billion. Although this amount is substantial, it is still insignificant compared to the US's massive budget. Therefore, we can confidently say that the US military system is much larger than China's. Secondly, let's consider the economic damage if the US and China were to engage in a war. Both countries would undoubtedly halt trade activities, similar to what happened between Russia and Ukraine. Currently, China exports much more to the US than the other way around. In recent years, China has consistently maintained a trade surplus of over $300 billion compared to the US. Therefore, if trade were to cease, China would lose a significant amount of money, approximately $300 billion annually. This would be the first major blow that China would have to endure in a war with the US. Additionally, the EU, which is China's largest trading partner, is also an ally of the US. If the US and the EU imposed sanctions on China, its economy could suffer greatly. While the US and the EU would also experience losses, they would be less severe. When a country lacks financial resources, it becomes challenging to sustain a military and continue the war. Thirdly, the US has many allies. Just by looking at the US's friends, we can gauge its strength. Many empires in World War I and World War II were allies of the US, such as Germany, Japan, France, and the United Kingdom, most of which are members of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO. The NATO alliance guarantees that if one country, like the US, is attacked, all members will come to its defense. Hardly any country would dare to provoke such a response. Fourthly, the US possesses extensive global power projection capabilities. As you may know, the US has over 800 military bases worldwide, especially in sensitive regions near China or Russia, where it has even more bases. What is the purpose of these bases? Just by looking at them, we can understand their significance. The US stores a vast amount of military equipment at these bases, which can be quickly deployed or moved within a short period if needed. Additionally, these bases facilitate logistical operations, such as fuel supply, weapons, medical supplies, and food. In contrast, China's operations outside its territory are limited by the range of their aircraft, naval vessels, and submarines due to their dependence on external fuel supplies. The US, with its nuclear-powered aircraft carriers, can dominate the seas for 4 years before needing to refuel. And its 68 nuclear-powered submarines have traveled across the world's oceans, demonstrating the naval power. China's aircraft, if not refueled, would have difficulty accessing US bases in the Pacific. While China has only 10 aerial refueling aircraft for over 1,000 combat aircraft, the US has 625 aerial refueling aircraft for 1,956 combat aircraft. Fifthly, the US military has extensive combat experience. The US has been involved in numerous conflicts, from World War II to the Korean War, Panama, Grenada, the Gulf War, Kosovo, Iraq, and Afghanistan. In these theaters, the US has learned valuable lessons and gained vast combat experience, regardless of victory or defeat. On the other hand, the Chinese military has been involved in fewer conflicts, which naturally means less experience. The US also has military training programs that attract students from around the world, while China does not. Lastly, the US possesses more advanced weapons. Although China has recently started producing many weapons independently, reducing its reliance on Russian imports, China's weapons are still not comparable to those of the US. While Russia and the US lead the world in defense technology, China still mainly learns from Russia. Most of China's weapon designs are reverse-engineered from Russian models, meaning they dismantle Russian weapons to study their structure and replicate them. However, the US has already acquired these types of weapons and is researching their characteristics, while China does not have access to the modern weapons that the US possesses. So, a war between the US and China would be an imbalanced fight, at least for the next decade. Do you think China could defeat the US? Let's discuss this in the comments.